Night's Embrace in the Oasis. Chapter 1. The Desert Rendezvous. The desert moon hung low, bathing the endless dunes in a soft silver glow. Naima trudged through the shifting sands, each step accompanied by the harsh rasp of silk against her skin. She wore a flowing dress the color of midnight, and the warm breeze caressed her bare arms like a lover's sigh. She had followed rumors, a whisper carried from one traveler to another of a hidden oasis where the night itself seemed to stir with magic. And indeed, there it was, a faint glow on the horizon. As she drew nearer, the silhouettes of date palms came into view, their fronds rustling as if greeting her arrival. Lanterns flickered around a small clearing, illuminating plush cushions scattered atop carpets in jeweled tones. A low table held a pitcher of spiced tea, its aroma mingling with the scent of desert flowers. But it was the man leaning against the tall palm tree that captured Naima's attention. He stood with a casual confidence, his linen shirt unbuttoned at the collar, revealing a glimpse of his smooth, dark skin. Even from a distance, she felt the pull of his gaze, intense and inviting. As she approached, he inclined his head, his voice low and resonant. "You have come a long way," he said, the corners of his mouth lifting in a smile. "Maybe," Naima replied, her pulse quickening under his scrutiny. "But I'm not sure what I've found." His answering smile deepened as he stepped closer. "I'm Idris," he offered an extending hand. "Naima," she returned, placing her hand on his. His grip was warm, deliberate, sending a thrill through her. "Welcome," Idris said, gesturing at the intimate setting. "The night is ours." The hush of the desert wrapped around them like a secret. Naima felt her anticipation spark, a tingling awareness that something extraordinary was about to unfold beneath this moonlight sky. Night's Embrace in the Oasis. Chapter 2. The Invitation. They settled on the plush cushions, the lantern light dancing over their features. Idris poured 2 cups of sweet spiced tea, the steam curling in the cool desert air. Naima noticed how his eyes never left her, as though they were memorizing each curve and contour. A shiver of excitement slid through her as she sipped. They spoke in low tones, sharing pieces of their stories, fleeting truths, half confessions. Idris had wandered the desert seeking solace, while Naima had simply needed to escape the confines of her routine. But the words felt secondary to the unspoken current that crackled between them. A gentle gust of wind tugged at Naima's dress, bearing a little more of her thigh. Idris' gaze flickered there, lingering for a moment before he caught her eyes, the heat in his look unmistakable. "You're bold," Naima teased, settling down her cup. "Only when it counts," he replied, his voice getting quieter. He leaned in, close enough that she could make out the faint spice of incense clinging to his shirt. "Dance with me." She let him guide her, her hand warm in his. There was no music, save for the hush of the sands and the crackle of nearby torches. Yet they fell into a slow, swaying rhythm, as if an unseen melody played. His hand slid to her waist, drawing her flush against him, and she felt the solid warmth of his chest beneath the thin barrier of her fabric. Her heart hammered an erratic beat, and when he dipped his head to brush his lips across her ear, her entire body buzzed with awareness. "Tell me if I'm going too fast," he murmured, his breath sending tingles down her neck. Naima lifted her eyes to his, placing a hand over his heart. "No," she whispered, her voice trembling with anticipation. "Not fast enough." Night's Embrace in the Oasis. Chapter 3. The Tented Sanctuary. A gust of wind made the lanterns flicker, their light casting dancing shadows on the palms. Idris took her hand, leading her towards the secluded corner of the oasis where a small, open-sided tent awaited, its gauzy drapes fluttering gently, offering just enough privacy while letting in the moonlight. Inside lay cushions and soft blankets, a seductive retreat that felt both intimate and wild. Naima's breath caught at the sight. She had dreamed of escape, a place where she could lose herself, and now she had found it in this tent, in this moment, with this man whose quiet confidence set her pulse aflutter. In excitement, she found herself pressing closer to him, sliding her hands up his chest, feeling the steady thrum of his heartbeat under her palms. His hands found her waist, their kiss ignited, slow at first, but quickly deepening into something more urgent. Naima moaned softly when his tongue brushed hers, a gentle invitation that made her knees weak. His hand traveled the length of her spine, pressing her closer, the warmth of his body enveloping her. She responded by tangling her fingers in his hair, drawing a hushed groan from him as their mouths melded. The loose drapes swayed around them, the desert wind playing its own quiet song. The press of his chest against hers, the slide of his thigh between hers, every sensation magnified by the hush of the night. With delicate precision, he lowered her onto the cushions, his gaze never breaking from hers. "Let me show you how beautiful you are," Idris whispered. Naima's pulse thundered in her ears as his lips began their journey along her jaw, down the graceful curve of her neck. She closed her eyes, surrendering to the mounting heat that curled through her core. Night's Embrace in the Oasis. Chapter 4. The Fire of Desire. Time seemed to stand still in that tent, every sense heightened. Idris's kisses grew bolder, his hands confidently exploring the lines and the planes of Naima's body as though committing them to memory. Her dress slipped from her shoulder, bearing more skin to the desert air. She shivered with anticipation, not from cold, but from the electric charge of his touch. He murmured her name against her collarbone, the sound carrying deep reverence that tugged at her heart. Naima's own hands found the edges of his linen shirt, sliding it off to reveal the hard veins of his chest. She traced her fingertips over his skin, reveling in the constant softness and strength in the way his muscles tensed under her exploration. The night wrapped them in a cocoon of heat and moonlight, the distant bustle of palms, an intimate backdrop. Idris's mouth traveled lower, his lips skimming the swell of her breath, his teeth grazing the sensitive flesh just enough to make her gasp. He paused, meeting her eyes in a silent check, a question without words. Yes, she breathed, her voice laced with urgency. That single word unleashed the final shred of restraint between them. Their bodies pressed closer, a magnetism guiding their every moment. Naima felt the plush cushions at her back, Idris's weight above her, and his breath ragged as he tasted her skin inch by inch. Her body arched to meet his, the friction of bare skin fueling the rush of sensation that coursed through her. Each kiss, each brush of his fingertips seemed to stoke an ever-growing fire within her. Their hands wove together, fingers interlocking as their passion crested, building like an oncoming wave. She moaned his name, unguarded and lost in the molten pool of desire that threatened to overwhelm her. Idris responded in kind, the night air filled with whispers and gasps that spoke of a mutual longing too powerful to resist. Night's Embrace in the Oasis, Chapter 5, The Dawn's Passion. When the first hints of sunrise touched the sky, they still lay entwined, a tangle of limbs and sated warmth. Naima rested her head on Idris's chest, listening to his heartbeat, a steady drum that soothed her in the aftermath of the tempest they had created. Outside the tent, the desert began to stir. Pale gold light danced over the dunes and the oasis shimmered in the early glow. Yet even as the dawn crept in, the heat between them refused to fade. Idris's fingers traced idle patterns across her back, sending soft ripples of sensation through her. She looked up, meeting the heat of his gaze all over again. "Morning," she said, her voice husky from hours of stolen breaths and whispered names. He leaned down, capturing her mouth in a slow, deliberate kiss. "We could stay here," he murmured, his words more suggestion than statement. A smile spread across Naima's lips. "We could," she agreed, her mind already drifting to thoughts of the morning's lazy possibilities. They rose to a sitting position. Naima marveled at how easily she fit into the curve of his body. The desert beyond the tent was wild and unyielding, but here, within these gauzy drapes, the world was just large enough for two. They dressed leisurely, exchanging soft touches and playful glances that promised the night of passions was far from over. As Naima slipped on her dress, she couldn't resist leaning in, pressing a slow kiss on Idris's chest. He inhaled sharply, his eyes fluttering closed, and for a moment she considered giving in to that magnetic pull once more. Eventually, they emerged into the gentle sunlight, hand in hand. The oasis felt changed, as though it too had borne witness to something transcendent. In a way, it had. Naima looked up at Idris, her heart full. She might not know where the day would lead, but she knew one thing for certain. In this desert haven, beneath the sun and the moon, she found more than just one night of passion. She found a spark of possibility that burnt brighter than any star. Thank you for spending time with us to travel through a moment of imagination. As we close, remember to like the video, subscribe to our channel, and share our content with friends who might love it too. As your support goes a long way to help us continue creating these immersive stories, consider donating using the link below. We appreciate every bit of your help. We look forward to seeing you in the next story.